Welcome to Surviving the Dream with your hosts, Casey Arnold
and David Conley.
We're here to talk to people who seem to have their dream job and find out, what did it take? Is it what they imagined? Is it worth it? How do they do it?
Join us as we uncover the secrets of surviving the dream.
Hi, Dave.
Professional. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. Hi, Casey. Yeah. So did we really start this podcast mid-sentence?
Yeah. Do you want a little fresh start? I'll give it a little clap for Mike and we can start fresh.
Or we can get the listeners to write in and go, what were they saying before that sentence? Maybe
the most interesting thing we've ever said. Let's just let it go. Look, sometimes we're just not that with it. And I think anyone who's listened before already knows that. So let's just keep it going. Let's just be who we are, Dave.
Well, I hope we've got a guest today because I think the way we're going, we need one. Quite frankly.
We're yeah. And you know what? We actually have the perfect guest for today, for a day where we are shorting out. We have a great guest. He's a puppeteer, an improviser, a writer, and a director. He's a man of many talents. It is Victor Yerrid. Hello, Victor.
It's not the first time I've worn ladies' underwear. Oh, you know, I thought
that was
we were
the
all
sentence.
starting the sentence.
Yeah.
Is that just for the beginning?
That was just, now we carry on and we'll just do it. Yeah, these are going to be good sound bites.
Yeah, this is just the episode where full sentences are overrated and we just pop in wherever we feel like it.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it.
So, Victor, you're a puppeteer. That's your profession that you have on your passport, is it? Puppeteer.
It's interestingly, yes, correct. I usually put entertainer because I feel like when you fill out, any type of tax form or something, you have to say your profession. I usually put entertainer because I always feel like puppeteer sounds like, not that there's anything wrong with kids' birthday parties, but it sounds like you just do birthday parties. I don't know. I try to sound more.
Yeah, but if we're going over the tax form, surely if you put puppeteer, wouldn't you have more tax deductible items?
Well, that's interesting. I guess
entertainer.
It means, more deductible than what profession? I mean,
well, entertainer sounds like a male exotic dancer. What are you just writing off your thong?
I know where I stand with a puppeteer. I'm going, oh yeah, I can see why he needs all these strings. I can see why he needed all that Velcro or whatever.
You know what? You're right. I'm gonna make a pledge to both of you right now.
Yeah.
The very next tax form I fill out, I'm gonna put 3 words: puppeteer, motherfucker, because that's gonna teach people.
Yeah.
That I'm proud of what I do.
Yeah.
And that I'm not afraid of profanity. We can curse on here, right?
Yeah. Well, you just did. Yeah.
Okay,
you don't think that'll get flagged up though? Like in the revenue, IRS go.
You know what? I'm going to take my pledge back. That's a fair point.
Yeah. I just don't want you to get into trouble because I like puppeteer. I think that would be great. But if they're going, oh look, there's a puppet. Oh, he called us motherfuckers. You could. That's fair. That could go.
Yeah, you don't want to piss off the IRS. But I have a question because you actually are a successful puppeteer who legit makes a living off of it and has worked on a lot of big things that everyone has seen. I understand. I'm guessing at the beginning when you said puppeteer, maybe people asked, can you make money at that? How are you going to make money at that? Is it just children's birthday parties? But, well, I have multiple questions then. How did it start? How did you get from there? And you do know that you're successful now, right?
Kind of you to say. I feel like I've been very fortunate in my career. And there is this little niche part of the entertainment industry that's TV, film, puppetry, which is what I do, that is actually a real job. It's just a very small, handful of people that are, lucky enough to do it. I did not, their puppeteers are always divided into 2 categories. They're people that love the Muppets and watch the Muppets in Sesame Street since they were born and always wanted to be Kermit the Frog and have always done little puppet shows. And those people tend to build puppets also. And the other camp is actors that just kind of fell into it. And that's me. I was always wanted to perform, but I did not start with puppetry. I actually started with classical music. That was my major in college. I played percussion and I loved music. But percussion is one of those things where some of the very best days you stand up and you hit the triangle and sit back down. It's not always, there are
you get
pieces
paid for that though, right? Imagine that.
You do get paid.
Put that on your tax form. Professional triangle player, triangulist.
I'm going to pledge to you right now at the next tax form I fill out. So I was playing percussion. I loved it. I did, get to play with some, great musicians and play more than just the triangle, but I was looking to try other stuff, and I started taking acting classes and voiceover classes, and I got really into kids' music. One thing I think that probably all puppeteers have in common, and maybe all of us and entertainers are this sort of arrested adolescence. And, I don't
know what you're talking about.
What are you saying, Victor? I think you're on your own on that one.
Well, at least I'll speak for myself.
Yes, I would do from now on.
No, we're lucky enough to be very close to our inner children.
Right. Well, that's a nice way of saying it. I would just say immature. But yes, I love Disney soundtracks and I loved Sesame Street soundtracks. I was really into the kids' music. So I got an internship at Sesame Street because I wanted to write kids' songs. So I started writing songs, and I made a little demo reel, and I got this job in their music department hoping to write for them. And that was the first time that I really saw anybody puppeteering. And I was like, ooh, that looks like another fun way to perform. I wasn't even instantly like, oh, that's for me. But being around it, meeting some other folks that did it, and then, starting to do it, then it kind of became what I wanted to do, or at least it became the area that I had success in the fastest. So that's what I sort of stuck with. So puppeteering became stable for you. Did Sesame Street help you do that? Yeah. So my first, the first stuff I was doing walk around Cookie Monster. So they'd have Sesame Street would do appearances, and I would, get in the suit and you give people hugs and you wave. You couldn't talk, but you just, would act like Cookie Monster.
Where were you doing this? Where were you playing the Cookie Monster?
Well, this was in New York City. It was in New York City. Yes, it was in openings, and they did stuff in Harlem. I went to the children's hospitals. I performed at World Trade Center with Bob McGrath, crazy.
So you're walking around as the Cookie Monster.
Correct. Yes.
Representing
their brand. And I was I became, not that this was a big mountain to climb, but I became their first call guy. So when they would shoot something, they would call me. I was on the Ricky Lake show. That was pretty impressive back in the day. So that was my early. And
can I just ask, what did you put on your tax form in those days?
Wow, that's a really good question. Yeah. I'm gonna have to pull those out.
Yeah, you didn't put "I am the Cookie Monster."
No, I think I decided early on that entertainer was cool, but also because I didn't know that this was going to pan out, and I still wanted to be an actor, and I was still doing voiceover, so I just thought entertainer kind of covered the gamut.
You are a multi-hyphenate. So wait, as Cookie Monster, is the physicality of puppeteering, does it start then? The way you move around and gesture to make him seem more alive translates into the kind of puppeteering you do now? Or
not necessarily. It's definitely much more physical and using your whole body. And I was young. I was in my 20s. So I loved jumping around on stage. That stuff was fun for me.
Can I just point out to our listeners that both Casey and Victor have both been physicalizing that brilliantly, and I wish you could see it.
If you could just imagine.
Yeah, imagine what they look like, the Cookie Monsters, both of them.
Just come to life right in front of you.
Sorry, it's all about chewing.
You might want to think about, releasing these on YouTube in the future.
Yeah, I think so. Sorry to interrupt, but I think it was an important moment for us.
But to answer your question, puppetry, there is some crossover because it's an animated. Puppets move differently than humans move, so there is that sort of animated quality to the performing, but it's very focused and it's very small, minute movements of your arm and hand and wrist to make those more animated looking characters. So it is a whole separate skill set, and the main skill set I had to learn was how to do that while watching a monitor. Because TV puppeteers always see their performance while they're doing it, so you can frame it to the camera so that your eyes are looking where they're supposed to look. Because it's that stuff you just can't tell from underneath if you're just trying to look up at it. You can't really tell exactly where it's looking. It's 1/8 of an inch, 1/16 of an inch difference of where the pupils are looking right into camera or a little bit off to the side, which immediately seems less alive.
So how do you make the jump from big walk around Cookie Monster to what more of us know as a traditional puppet with your hand in the puppet that you're making all the gestures, and now you're allowed to talk and sing and give it life?
Yeah. So while I was at Sesame Street, I met another intern, a guy named Tom Spina, who now has this great company called Regal Robot, and he does all these like replicas. He was somebody that was that first category of puppeteer that loved puppets since he was little, and he'd watched everything Jim Henson had ever done, and he built puppets. And I met him on his last day of work, and he invited me to come work on some cable access show he was doing with puppets. And he was kind of the first guy that showed me how the puppets move and everything. And so I was sort of doing that with him simultaneously with the Cookie Monster thing. But then the kind of very specific crossover was because of that walk around stuff. They were looking for somebody to do Sweetums for the Muppets. You know, Sweetums is that if you watch the first Muppet movie, he's the guy that spends the whole movie chasing after him, and he's like, "Hey guys, I want to go to Hollywood," and he's like spends the whole time like following them around. So they needed somebody for that, and because I was doing the Cookie Monster stuff, my boss at the New York shop, Ed Christie, a heroic person who gave me my first Muppet puppet job, was recommending me to do Sweetums. And so I started doing appearances as Sweetums. But anyway, the point is Sweetums has a puppeteerable mouth. So he actually is a puppet. So you're inside a costume, but you are puppeteering the mouth when you talk. And then eventually they needed extra puppeteers on Bear in the Big Blue House. And that became kind of a regular gig for me. And it became, after, 4 or 5 years, I quit my day job and started, earning my living doing this, which is insane. That was over 30 years ago, almost 30 years ago.
What was the day job? That wasn't being Cookie Monster.
No, it was. So after my internship, I got a job in the New York puppet workshop where they built the puppets, and that was Ed Christie was the head of the shop there. So I was like an administrative coordinator. I was answering phones and fixing computers and doing stupid office stuff. But around the puppets.
Puppets. You've been sort of there. The puppet gods were talking to you, weren't they? Saying, I think
it is funny, they gave me a tour my first day there. Ed gave me a tour, and like you see these characters, and like it's Kermit the Frog is on a little stand, and they're like little celebrities at first. Yeah. And then after like a few weeks, you're like, I'm giving tours, and I'm like, yeah, this is the Grover, and I like throw them on and then throw them in a bucket. Like, it becomes less, amazing. But when you first get there, you're kind of blown away by these little characters that you. Yeah,
I don't want you to ruin it, but is there more than one Kermit?
I think there's multiples of. Yeah. I mean, all of those characters. Yeah.
Really.
Yeah, because that felt's real absorbent.
Yeah.
Yeah, those puppets only last about 8 or so years, and then they say they become toasty because the foam inside crumbles, and it is like brown little pieces of what looks like toast that when you put your hand in, it's kind of gross.
So there's a shelf life for
there is, yeah.
Oh, wow.
And what about because I know you do, I think, predominantly comedic puppeteering. I don't know if there is dramatic puppeteering, but a lot of the stuff you do is improv and comedic. I met you through doing puppet improv. Like that seems like a blending of a lot of very specific skills. How do you?
I think we should just write that down though. Dramatic puppeteering. Maybe the SVU, the puppeteer. I think
there are shows. I did a really wonderful. One of my most favorite things I've ever worked on. In fact. Just a couple years ago in London, we did the Dark Crystal Age of Resistance, which was very dramatic.
I actually helped out with that production.
What?
Yeah.
Did we hang out?
No. I know the producer very well, Blanca Lister, and I know the composer, Ben. And so I did the temp track for the teaser for that.
Get out of here.
Before it was actually made. In fact, you could say thanks, Dave, because of me and my voice. Well, it wasn't. I hardly did anything really. They actually greenlit it.
Well, I do thank you for that. I would thank you more if we got a second season, but I do appreciate.
Sorry about that. It got an Emmy. It did get an Emmy.
Yeah, that's true. But to your point, Casey, yes, a lot of what I've done has been comedic stuff, and even within kids TV, usually they want characters that are funny, that are interesting, that kids kind of are tickled by, and so being a puppeteer is kind of this amalgam of skills that each new level you add, the pool gets smaller and smaller. So you have to be able to do voices. You have to be able to do the manipulation of the puppet. You have to be able to act. And that's really right there. That's a big one. Like when there are a lot of people that love Jim Henson and love puppets and love the Muppets, but either not that they can't act, because I think anybody can act, but haven't taken the time to study it. Well, I just, all these skills I think it's not brain surgery, but
you can learn it. Yeah, you're right.
But I feel like there are people that haven't taken the time to maybe study that or don't have that natural inclination. And then on top of that, you have improvisation, you have singing. And once you have like those 5 things, your pool is like really, really small of the people that have done all that. So anyway, yeah, it's a lot of skills. I don't even remember what the question was, Casey. What
just how do you come to have all those skills? Because you've done adult stuff too, like you've done Crank Yankers. I'm forgetting Sarah Marshall. Like, are people like, oh my God, there's only 5 people who do all of these 5 things. We need Victor. We need whoever those other 4 are. Or you just on the job, much like many of us, when people are like, can you do this? You're like, of course I can. And then you figure it out because you got to get that paycheck.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's everybody's sort of journey to get there is different. I mean, I feel like for me, because when I lived in New York, I took, I studied improv, I studied acting. Those things I felt comfortable with before puppeteering. So the puppeteering was just kind of a new thing to add to that. It was actually the manipulation that was the most challenging for me, learning how to make the puppet move in an interesting, convincing, lifelike, subtle, way. And Crank Yankers was actually an incredible school for me, because it's one of the few shows where we're not doing the voice, where they've pre-recorded these, celebrities and comedians doing prank phone calls, and we're lip syncing to them. So the only thing you have to do is study the track and then bring the manipulation to it and try to bring it to life in the most convincing, most interesting, fun way. And so that was really hard for me, because I've always relied on, if you're funny and doing a silly voice, then they're not really paying too close attention to what the puppet's doing. Like my personality is usually with the puppets bigger than, my technique was, at least in the early days. And so that show allowed me to really focus on technique and kind of try to up my game, for that part of it.
What a cool job you have. Do you love it? Or do you think, oh no, I've got to put my hand up Kermit's ass again?
No. Well, I have not been one of the few proud, lucky ones that do Kermit, but I do feel incredibly lucky and love what I do. I mean, you're like doing stupid voices and it's like any actor, you're getting scripts and doing lines and stuff, but the same as actors, the writers do all the hard work and the producers do all the hard work. And then everybody thinks you're amazing. And like, they're like, you're so funny. And I'm like, I didn't write any of that, but, there's a lot of adulation. But aside from that, I've been able to like travel the world. I worked in London for a year, and I worked in Northern Ireland and Scotland and China. And, who would have thought that like doing stupid voices would take you to all those places, but, been able to bring my family and along with me. And, so yeah, I for sure love it. It does, as you get older, get a little harder on your body. I will say that it's a very physical job, and, your right arm, staying up in the air for hours and hours of your life eventually sort of takes a toll. And your back and sort of everything. So it's not for the I don't know, weak bodied. There's got to be a better word than that.
But do you have to do exercise and stuff?
Yeah, I mean,
Pilates could probably help with that.
I was going to ask that.
Yeah.
General, I mean, in general, I know you guys are looking at me and you're like, this guy's an Adonis. He probably doesn't do anything. Yeah. But yes, I do have to. I mean, we all have to exercise, try and eat healthy, be flexible. I do Bikram yoga sometimes, I do it for periods of time and then come back to it to try and stay flexible. And and you have to be mindful when something is getting injured or hurting you, that you go to, rehab and, physical therapy and do what you need to do to kind of get it back up and running.
I mean, do you do more stuff for your right hand than your left hand? Because that one has to be stronger and up in the air longer. It's like you and boom operators could do workouts together with your arms up in the air all day.
It's actually, I think it's more your right shoulder than anything else. That's what really takes a beating. Yeah. It's your shoulder. And a couple years ago, maybe 3-4 years ago, we did the last season of CRANK YANKERS. It was the 6th season. And I kind of blew out my shoulder. It really, I could still puppeteer, but it was just in a lot of pain. And it wasn't that I had broken or torn anything. It was just that by reaching up all the time, my shoulder had gotten too high and too far forward in relation to the socket. And so it was scraping. And so I had to it took me almost a year of physical therapy, which was basically trying to stretch my shoulders back and down. And I can't think of the muscle back there,
scapula? Is that what that is?
Oh, it is a scapula. Wow. Why do you guys know that?
Every now and then something smart pops into my head.
Yeah. But it's that your scapula, you have to pull, strengthen that muscle and pull your shoulders back and down to avoid that. So it does. There are costs to what we do.
And you mentioned family as well. So that's
a big cost. My family's been a huge cost.
to
my career.
I was wondering.
He's got 3 kids, Dave. It is a huge cost.
Well, I want to know: is there the Father Christmas syndrome where you want to tell your kids, "Hey, I'm the puppeteer," and they're like, "But we thought they were real."
It's funny because number one, my kids have been on set with me since they were 2 years old.
So they never had that moment of going.
Well, but here's the thing. Here's the thing. Even with adults, when that puppet is there in front of you and talking to you, you kind of forget about the human. You don't pay attention. And if I was, you and I were talking right now and I noticed you were looking at me instead of the puppet, I just put it in front of my face and kind of get your attention back there. And there's something about that flapping your hand with a puppet on it and talking that people just zero in on, and especially kids. With kids, you don't even have to, you don't even have to try. They're not interested in you. So I think they for sure talked to those characters and since they were little and it never felt like I was shattering some illusion for them.
Wow.
That's good. I think it speaks to your level of puppeteering, though. I was telling Dave when we were talking about having you on that I met you at Henson and that I hadn't really thought that much about puppeteering until I worked there. And
I thought you were going to say, I mean, I hadn't really thought that much about you. You seemed like a nice guy, but just not interesting or impressive.
I mean, I wouldn't say that to your face, Victor. No. Obviously, you were nice immediately, which is why we stayed friends. But I saw Brian Henson puppeteer and seeing that level of mastery, even though same as with your kids, you see the person puppeteering right in front of you and the puppet on your hand, and the adult in you is that's not a real thing. It's somebody with a thing on their hand. But yeah, when somebody knows what they're doing, immediately you're talking to the puppet and the actual human making all of that happen completely disappears into the background. Does that still happen for you with other puppeteers? If you guys are messing around, you're just talking to the puppet?
Absolutely. I love watching other great performers puppeteer and do some character that's surprising or funny, in some way. But, again, all those skills that I mentioned, voice manipulation, improv, singing, it's the acting that's the one that really holds you. So it really comes down to how much that person is an interesting performer, and what their acting ability is that comes through. And I think if you are a good actor, even if your manipulation's not great and your voice, some people just do their own voice. If your character's believable and fun and funny, it just goes such a long way. And I think everybody, loves watching. You don't have to suspend your disbelief that far to start paying attention to this character that's talking to you in real time. I mean, that's the other thing is when we're in a room together and the puppet starts talking to you, if you're uncomfortable and you don't want to talk to it, that's, fine. But if you're engaging in any way with it, you can't sort of help but that person's off the cuff, responding to you, they're going to make you laugh. They're going to, say some truth or something that you can't sort of deny is happening in real time. You know what I mean?
So how would you say that the expectation of your acting and puppeteering career or dreams compares to the reality of how it's going and how it's been?
That's a good question. I mean, I still love what I do for sure. And there have been jobs that have been that dreamlike scenario where all the scripts are great and the cast is really well balanced and fun and funny and gets along. But I think the truth of any Hollywood job, and maybe any job, is that there's always some producer that doesn't like you or some puppeteer that you're competitive with or whatever it is. There's all those just work things that kind of sour, the experience. But that also, I think that's also a reflection of me and my ability to give that stuff importance or not. Right. So, if you're in the right headspace and you're like, yeah, well, there's a lot of other great stuff here and you just focus on that stuff. But I would say the best of jobs 100% meets or exceeds what my, expectations would have been. And sometimes you're like, well, I'm getting paid for this one, and then I'll do a different job. So
I love the idea of competitive puppeteers. What happens there?
You get your Speedos on, you get out the slip and slide, and
it could be the Olympic sport if they're taking breakdancing out.
I mean, if breakdancing's
See what the Australian puppeteer's like next time.
Does puppeteering translate into real life at all? Well, I guess you also have the musical skills and the improvising and the acting and stuff. Does that help you in day-to-day life also? And I notice you gesture a lot as you talk. Do you do that all the time as if you have a puppet?
You mean, does it help me in day-to-day life, like going to the bank?
Yeah, just as a person in the world. Or do you like hiding behind your puppet?
That's funny. I mean, I think being a performer in any way hopefully gives you some insight into the human condition and makes you a little more of a good human being. When you go to talk to people in the real world, you're like, maybe more empathetic. I don't know. It does feel very separate for me, because the performing stuff and the TV side is so contained in these high adrenaline, 8-hour work day, 12-hour work day, 16-hour work day, whatever it is, where you're so, sharply focused on that. And then when I get home and I am taking my kids to, cello lesson or basketball or whatever, I'm not thinking about that stuff. So I don't know. I don't honestly know. I mean, I think it all kind of develops you as a human being. So I guess it, in some ways it does, but I'm not aware that I don't know if I would have talked with my hands as much if I weren't a puppeteer. I think I probably would have.
When you were a kid, did you used to watch things like the Muppets?
I didn't. I remember I saw the Muppet movie and I thought it was really fun and funny, but I didn't really watch the Muppet Show. I started watching Sesame Street in college. I was into.
Should we talk about that?
Were you high?
I mean, it was. You'd think that my story is like, oh yeah, me and my buddies used to smoke pot but it wasn't that. It was just me thinking, wow, this show's fun. I just thought it was charming, and I loved the voices, and I loved once I started listening to the music, I was like, oh, that's Jerry Nelson. Oh, I know that voice. That's Frank Oz doing that one. So for me, it was the fun of kind of figuring out who the performers were and the voices were and that sort of thing. But yeah, I had no aspiration. In fact, speaking of Dark Crystal, my one memory, my memory of the Dark Crystal was that it scared the crap out of me as a kid. Those big Gartham, like huge beetles with their clicky claws. I was like, oh my God, this is like a nightmare. And they ripped like the Chamberlain's clothing off, and he's like weirdly, they had to put him in this weird position so he could be puppeteered through the wall. So he's like standing with his like two hands on the wall and his like exposed anorexic looking rib cage, and he's like panting. I'm like, what am I watching? This is a nightmare. So I did not, that was not my dream to do that.
What were you supposed to be studying at college? Just out of interest.
I was a classical music major. I went to
of course, yes.
Yeah. I went to the Curtis Institute of Music, which is this really phenomenal conservatory. Mm-hmm. They only accept enough people for one orchestra, but if you get in, it's a full scholarship. So kids come from all over the world to this school in Philadelphia, and really. As different as it is from puppetry, it all feels connected to me. Like it was all about becoming a focused performer, learning how to manage performance energy and tell a story, really. I mean, ultimately, through music, through characters, through whatever. I know that's such a cheesy thing to say, like being a storyteller, but it is all kind of,
So
but it's also the rhythm, right? Like the rhythm of music and the rhythm of comedy.
Absolutely. For sure. Comedy, and for sure, like even doing like ADR sessions, like, for me, it's 100% rhythm and music and matching, the music of the dialogue. So
the original dream was really music. That's if 16-year-old Victor was going, I'm going to be a musician.
I think so. Yeah. I think I wanted to be a classical musician. I wanted to play, in one of the big 5 orchestras but prior to that, I had done when I was little, I had studied piano, but I had also done like little acting classes, and we had done like these little shows for my grandparents. My mom would write out these little scripts, and we would do like little plays and shows. And when I was graduating from school, and I came to this sort of realization, like, do I really want to be a classical musician? I actually remembered back to those shows and how I loved the other types of performing that there were. And so that's when I started taking acting classes again, right after I graduated. And yeah, so I think 16 years old was music, but I think prior to that, it was always to be a performer in some way. Like I never dreamed of being a scientist or doctor or lawyer or any of those smart, much better jobs.
But you could play one.
Yeah, for sure. Or at least puppeteer a version of one.
I was going to say, what is the dream now?
I just want a lot of money. I think I just want to be able to be comfortable. I'd love to be able to eat as much as I can and lose weight.
Oh my God, that is the dream.
So many dreams. No, I think career-wise, it'd be selling shows. I certainly have. I've had some success selling stuff. I did a nice pilot for Disney Junior a few years back, and I've got projects that I'm trying to sell and develop. So only so that I have a little more control over what I'm doing, a little more investment. I enjoy directing, but honestly, mostly just puppet shows. Like I don't know. I don't see myself directing, a sitcom or a movie or anything like that. I have learned over the years some of the tricks to shooting puppets, how they look good, and between that and like a feel for the rhythm of the scene and everything, I enjoy being a director of puppet shows. So I wouldn't mind doing more of that, but honestly, if I could puppeteer till I'm, 95, I'd be happy with that.
So tell us about directing then. I mean, what's the difference? Like, because do you ever direct yourself as well as a when you're doing your own puppetry?
Almost always. Most of the opportunities that I've had to direct, there have been shows where I wasn't in it, but I'm such a performance whore. Like I love being on camera. I love talking, and there's a job in puppetry called lead puppeteer. Sometimes they call it puppet captain, but basically you're like the head puppeteer, and you're doing a lot of communicating with the director and the producers. And when you're shooting, if you feel like you didn't get a take quite right, and you're saying, oh, can we do one more? Can we do one more? And then you're like kind of begging to like, can I please try again? Which I hate. And so as a director, I love being in a position to just say, let's go again. Let's try it again. So for me, I love directing when I'm puppeteering. It just takes out that middle person. I already, in my mind, know how I think it should look or what would make it good. And I just don't have to ask as much permit. Not that great directors will come in with different ideas that I don't have. And obviously that's a plus to the work. But I feel very comfortable directing myself and a scene with other performers. I've been lucky enough to do that many times.
How does that work when you've got? I've performed and been a director, and I made a decision after being in a movie where I was directing and performing in that I would never do that again.
Same.
I thought it was too difficult.
I don't know. I mean, I feel like you have to love the directing part of it. To some extent. I just did a little music video that I was directing and performing in, but also producing. And that was one step too far for me. I was like, I can't, be like trying to shop for puppet overalls and get ready for the shoot. Like I need to think about the work. So producing is a bit, all three of those is a bit too far, but for the directing side of things, it actually is simpler to me because like I say, most of the time you get the script, you read it, and you have ideas of what it should be. And you work with great directors that are very collaborative. You say, oh, I have this idea that, we could come from back here and then this would be a reveal, and you pull out 2 or 3 shot and they're like, great, and some puppeteers are like, yeah, why don't you stand over there and I'll tell you what we're shooting, but, for me, it's just, it's a way to do the things that are already in my head while I'm performing anyway. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't feel like that much extra work. The stuff that's challenging for me, because I love the performing and I love what the other characters are doing and how it relates. The thing that's challenging to me is when, the set decorators like, so we've got these, blinds and we've got these blinds, or we could do this curtain. And I'm like, I don't have any idea. Like, I don't know. Like that stuff isn't I'll have an opinion if something's like, I was like, oh, that's too bright, or, mm-hmm. I have some opinions about that kind of stuff, but mostly, you're as a director, you're a real arbiter of everyone's tastes. Mm-hmm. And so if it's something that I don't have a strong interest or strong opinion about, you just rely on those people to do it. But I do sometimes feel a little like a fraud when people are asking me about, stuff about costumes and hair. Do you want their hair? Should their hair be up or do you like it down? I'm like, I don't know what their hair should look like. I really don't know at all. I
love that honesty, because I remember when I was directing something, and it's always the worst moment or the best, depending on your opinion, was when you shout, okay, let's move on. And then suddenly you're surrounded by every head of department asking you a question about the most insane thing, going, yeah. And they just want quick decisions, don't they, to move on. But I found that as a performer, and this might be different as a puppeteer, as an actor, is what's difficult is I hated watching myself. And you have to look at your own, at the monitor going, yeah, oh God, is that what I look like? Oh no. Oh,
well, that's a good point you bring up, David, because that is one of the quintessential differences between puppeteers and actors. As an actor, you're best off when your attention is not on yourself, when you're interacting and talking and listening and dealing with the other characters in your scene. But as a puppeteer, because of that framing aspect, because of the monitor, you have to be hyper aware of your position in the frame and how your head is tilted, because it falls apart. If you turn the neck too far, it looks broken. If you don't turn it enough, it looks like you're not looking the right direction. So you have to be hyper aware of that stuff, but then also be able to free yourself as a performer to still be listening and still reacting and do the scene truthfully and all those things. So I think because of what we do, because we're always looking at the monitor and things of like, which side of the line am I on? And we're seeing this thing in the background. It looks like my puppet's wearing a hat. Like all those things that as a human actor, you maybe are not watching and other people are telling you. As a puppeteer, you have to learn all that stuff as part of it. So I feel like the directing is almost kind of baked in a little bit to what we do.
That's really interesting. It almost sounds kind of liberating. Whereas as an actor, I think it's not. Some actors do it incredibly well, but I always find that tricky because I don't, as an actor, a performer, the last thing I want to see is a monitor. But as a director,
I get that. I like being a writer.
Yeah. I mean, look, I've written, for stuff as well, and to me, that's the hardest of all of them. I have so much respect for writers because I for me, it's like such a struggle, and as a performer, I mean, you're so grateful when you have a script that works and is smart and is funny, and I give all the props to you guys for that.
Okay, Victor, you're hired. Yeah. What inspires?
And do you have any puppet projects? Is my next question.
I do now. Yes, we're going to come up with.
We'll turn them into puppet projects.
What I have written with Victor. Victor, you're fun to write with. Except for when you're giving up on the hope that someone else should come in and figure it out, which I think every writer feels like sometimes they're like, oh God, I wish someone could just think of the answer. Oh shit, I'm not someone. I have to have all the answers to make this work because I came up with this idea. What inspires you when you're puppeteering for like a voice or a movement or a character? Like how much is up to you and how much is already on the page?
That's a good question. Typically, for most shows you're auditioning. So, you get the sides and sometimes they'll have a picture of the puppet, most times not. Mm-hmm. So, you're kind of coming up with your voice and your character. And I usually develop that stuff through improv. Like I'll take whatever script I'm given to audition with and I'll just talk through it, but then continue on and try to think of jokes and extend it. And then, through that, sometimes you'll come up with little quirks and recurring little whatevers that sort of, differentiate you a little bit. So by the time we get to where we're shooting, presumably you've kind of developed some of that stuff. And there are directors that really want to get in deep on character and like, help develop it with you and find those things and make it better than you've already got it. But I think when in kids TV, a lot of times, I think they just kind of rely on you to bring that stuff. And sometimes, I usually, for most auditions, I try to have 3 or 4 voices, and the producers, or people, they'll pick which one that they like. But a lot of times it's not the one that I liked or would have gone with. But once they've made that decision, I've always been of the mind that, it's not my project. I'm serving, someone else's creative vision. So you just have to 100% get on board, unless it feels like fraudulent or, stupid. I will push back if they're like, oh, I love, when you made that mistake and accidentally said that word, funny. And I'm like, yeah, I don't want to do that. Like, that's not funny. So I do feel like I have some, small amount of principles, or integrity, but mostly, you're serving someone else's vision. So, you try and get on board with what they like about what you're doing.
Before we get to questions, because we're coming to the end, I just want to ask you a little bit about the audition process. Because I'm
so glad we're getting to the end, David. This has been
you're having the time of your life.
You're nearly there, Victor. You're nearly there. But I want to.
Yes.
What is it? But because I understand as an actor, like people, and especially in the modern world, and since post-pandemic, everyone has to put themselves on tape, and and that's kind of how things are done now. How does it work for a puppeteer to audition? Are you self-taping? Are you going to someone's office? Do you have the puppet with you, or is it just a voice?
It is a giant pain in the ass doing self-tapes as a puppeteer. I mean, I think it's a giant pain in the ass as an actor, although, I mean, the thing is, look, people like it because you're at home. Look, I do love not having to drive to Santa Monica at 5 o'clock, during rush hour. I do appreciate that, but I have to set up my tripod and a camera and maybe a light. And for a puppet, you have to set up a monitor so you can see, and you have to have a puppet that you can use. And so that's just that is what things have become, and then that goes for puppeteers as well as actors. But it's really run the gamut. If you're auditioning for someone that has no idea what they're doing, sometimes they'll tell you, everybody bring your own puppet, right, to audition. Well, then they're making their choice in some part based on what they're seeing. Like, oh, that little groundhog puppet was so cute. Yeah, but that's not, you're not going to use that puppet.
Right.
And we could all do a groundhog voice, maybe, you know what I mean? So it's like, they're not comparing apples to apples. And then sometimes you're just doing voices. Sometimes it's just a vocal audition and they're not even seeing what you're doing. One of the best jobs I ever had, I said, was that Dark Crystal job. And they auditioned me. And I think I got the job largely in part because I spoke Podling for the whole series. And so for the audition, they gave you the English line and you had to do gibberish. And I'm pretty good at doing gibberish. It's an improv game where you do foreign language gibberish. So I felt super comfortable doing that. And I did really well, I think, in my audition. But the job actually wasn't that. The job was they wrote an entire Podling language, and I was saying very specific words that meant very specific things, as part of the script. So even there for the Jim Henson Company, that was like one of the biggest puppet companies in the world and have done tons of auditions. And, they knew me, they knew my skill set. And I think they believed I had, what they were looking for anyway. But even on that one, the skill set I auditioned with wasn't really exactly what the job ended up being. So there is something to that, the puppeteering auditions being a little more wonky than auditioning as a human, because it's not always one for one what the job's going to be.
That to me is fascinating, and thank you for giving us that extra little bit of time.
Do they? Yeah, wait, I have a little question to tag on to that. Does it shift based on your skills? Like if they're auditioning a lot of people and say you have the different voice, but you also have a different skill level, or you have improv abilities where someone doesn't, like, do the characters change with who the puppeteer is that they've hired?
Yeah, I think 100%. I mean, I think, part of like the places, like I said, I mentioned the Jim Henson Company and like Sid Marty Krofft, like those companies that do multiple puppet productions, they rely on us to bring a certain amount to these jobs where we're kind of I think in any good series, you're kind of developing that character through the first season as you go. And I think they like to hire people that they know are going, or they hope are going to have that creative process to develop the character. And you throw out some funny improv line or add some little thing that you're pretending is an improv line that you thought about doing the day before. And then the writers start writing to that because, that becomes what that character is. I mean, usually it's not a huge dramatic departure from how the character started. I think it's generally just developing a little more and finding those sort of personality quirks that give it some dimension. I mean, that's why if I at all did have anything bad to say about birthday puppeteers, I think the difference is those, in my mind, maybe I just had shitty birthday puppeteers as a kid, but in my mind, those are often very two-dimensional characters. It's like, I'm the prince and I'm the princess. It's like you think of those like, cheesy two-dimensional things. And I think in professional, TV movie stuff, you need depth to the characters to make them interesting. And so all that development that continues to happen third and fourth and even fifth, season of a show, I think is what makes it interesting and watchable.
Agreed. And I think you want to play to your performer's strengths too. I'm talking from like a bunch of the animation I've done. I might have an idea for a character, but then we get into the voice record and I hear everybody doing it and I'm like, oh, they're doing a little something different than I thought, which I like, or, oh, they're never going to be able to play the version of this character that I envision. Let me tweak that to what they do well. And I think the performances and the writing like continue to inform each other, especially at the beginning of a show. So it's good teamwork.
You know what's I find terrifying as a human actor is laughing. I think it's so hard. I'm one of those people. There's nothing prideful about this because I think it's a shitty quality, but it takes a lot to make me laugh. Like I'm not an easy laugh,
Yeah.
which people kind of say is a badge of honor. I don't think it's a badge of honor. I think it's lame, and I wish I laughed more. As a puppeteer, I can laugh in character anytime, drop of a hat, big, silly, small, like it's, but as a person, when you were talking about that, it just made me think like if a writer wrote for me as a human, he starts laughing hysterically, I'd like immediately sweat, panic. Like how do you do that? Some people are amazing. I don't know how they do it.
Thank you for telling me what your first scene in my next show will be.
Well, we really do have to get. We've been too fascinated by you, so we're running on a little bit. But we're going to go to the regular questions that we ask all our guests here. Number one question here, which I always ask, is I'm kind of fascinated to see what you come up with here. If you won the lottery,
was that not the question? Sorry.
The lottery.
Apologize.
If you win the lottery, the big one, what are you going to do?
I think the same thing a lot of people do. I would pay off my house. I would pay off my cars. One of the things I would pay for is to fly first class. I feel like flying first class is so disproportionately expensive to flying in coach that I would never pay for it myself. But if I were wealthy, that's like I would do that. Those are the selfish things I would do. I would probably give money to my family, and then shit. I mean, I guess I should do something philanthropic. I don't know. Start a foundation for some bullshit charity.
You don't have to. You don't have to. It's your money, Victor. Don't feel.
No, I grew up in a family that didn't have a lot of money, so I think the idea of winning the lottery is just like security for generations as long as I possibly can. As long as I possibly can.
You're looking after the Victor line.
That's right. That's not a bad answer.
I like that. No, I like that. My question is really deep after that question. Yeah. What's your favorite snack, Victor?
Is cake a snack? Can cake be a snack?
I think it is now.
It can be, yeah.
Cake, it's lasagna, it's pizza. None of those are snacks. God, I'm such a sweet tooth. Boba, is that a snack? I don't know.
I mean, how much of them are you eating? I think they can all be a snack.
I think, highest calorie. Now, see, here's the thing. I'm always fighting gaining weight. So favorite snack that am actually eating, or what do I wish I could constantly?
I want to hear both because I feel you. I live in that world with you.
Cake would be my my answer if I could have anything. What is really my go-to snack is probably fruit. Boo. Yeah. Boo, fruit.
We just don't believe you.
My little cousins grew up with a saying when they were like children that they would be like, fruit is not dessert. Fruit is not dessert. That they would all just chant at the end of the meal.
That's so true. So true. Right.
So, Victor, what's your favorite animal and why?
Favorite animal? Can I tell you my least favorite animal?
Let's go there.
I am so afraid. Have you ever been to the zoo and looked at the silverback gorillas? Oh, yeah. They just would rip you apart, and they look like, why are they all so muscular? Do they have dumbbell? Like, are they working out in the in the enclaves that they hide in?
They're getting ready for you to fall into the enclosure and go,
they're so ready. Yeah. They terrify me.
Muscle Beach.
Yeah, it's like those Planet of the Apes movies. I find them terrifying. Favorite animal?
Oh, would you play one in a movie? Would you like to play the big, scary silverback?
Sure.
Walk around silverback? Yeah.
Yeah, I'd do that. I mean, Skeksis were kind of like that. They were sort of horrific. They were sort of horrific. I mean, my wife is allergic, so sadly, my kids have no pets. Oh. She's allergic to animals, but I guess, I could get some dog or something. Yeah. Is that a good answer? A dog.
Maybe a snake. Could you get a snake? There's
no David, that's disgusting.
Okay. I'm just giving you ideas. It's not all over. Yeah.
That was the wrong one.
Oh, okay. It's not a snake.
Right. Okay. And our final question.
Yeah.
If we really knew you, Victor, what would we know about you?
If you really knew me, you would know that the only things that matter to me in the world are my wife and my kids. My family and spending time with my family is everything. I love my career. It's fun what I do. I love what I do. But honestly, spending time with my girls and my wife is all that I care about. And to that point, two of my daughters are juniors. I have non-identical twins. I got 2 more years, and my heart. I've been like worried since they were like babies of what was going to happen when they leave me one day, and it's coming down the pike. It's 2 years away, and I cannot imagine what my life is going to be like. But yes, people that know me, they know that.
They are cute girls too. I've met them, and your wife is delightful. And hopefully they all still want to talk to you after they have the option to leave the house.
Well, if they don't, I will find them and they can talk to me.
Just send a puppet round there. Yeah.
That's a good idea.
Victor, this has been delightful. Thank you for spending time with us.
You're delightful, Casey.
Thank you, Victor.
Thank
David.
you, Victor.
Dave, you're okay.
Blessed.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks for turning up, David. Yes, I get that a lot. Victor, it's
you
been
are
amazing.
a party and a half, my friend.
Thank you so much. This has been fascinating. I'm sorry we went on a little bit long, but you were too interesting. So
yeah, it was all good.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody, for living. Go put on those sock puppets. Quick shout out to Mike Nicholas for being our tech savior, and Carmen Sclafani, also known as Wiser Time. Thanks for our music, and thank you all for listening.